Do you find yourself in the pantry at night eating Oreo after Oreo? Or maybe with your arm frantically looking in the freezer for the pint of ice cream? If you said yes, then you are in the right place because today we're going to talk about how to control binge eating at night. And not only that, but we're going to talk about why it happens, because there is a reason for it. As a registered dietitian, I know the science behind why we binge eat, and I've also lived it. I struggled with how to control binge eating at night for what feels like so long, and if I had just known what I'm about to tell you in this video, life would have been a lot easier. Okay, let's start with what the heck is binge eating. Binge eating is when you are eating large amounts of foods in a short amount of time, usually coupled with feelings of guilt and shame. Binge eating is not the same as eating past fullness, where we might eat a couple more Oreos than our body needs and we feel a little less than fabulous. There might still be that guilt and shame there, which diet culture has kind of conditioned us to feel, but kind of think about the experience of it. Was it very quick? Was it very mindless? Was it a very large amount of food in a short amount of time? Just because you ate past fullness does not mean you necessarily binge ate. I think sometimes we throw that term around a little willy-nilly, especially with social media. I mean, it's a total buzzword. Or maybe you're at a birthday party and they serve birthday cake, even after you've had a full meal and you're not necessarily hungry, but you still enjoy the birthday cake. You might eat past fullness, and that is totally normal. That does not mean that you binge ate. Overeating is a normal part of life. Or maybe you have a meeting in the afternoon and you use what I call practical hunger. You're not necessarily hungry. Say it's 11 a.m., your meeting's from 11:30 to 2:30, and you know that by the time 2:30 comes around, you're going to be starving. So you might eat when you're not necessarily hungry, leaving you a little too full. Eating past fullness does not mean that you binge ate. Let's reiterate that. I have a full blog post on practical hunger. I'll link to it in the description below if you want to learn more on that. The definitions between binge eating and overeating can get a little blurry, to say the least, and a lot of people kind of have their own definitions of it. And like I said, I feel like with social media, the term has kind of lost a lot of its true meaning because it's thrown around. But like I said, it's that large amounts of food, not larger than you usually eat, like large amounts of food in a small amount of time. And again, not smaller amount of time than you usually do, like a very quick amount of time. And a lot of times it can be coupled with feeling very emotional, which we'll get into. So it can be an action that you take based off of an emotion that you feel or a desired outcome, like feeling good or stress relief, or it could be a biological urge, and I'll get to that in a second. Okay, so why does binge eating happen? It can happen for a couple reasons. Sometimes it could happen because our bodies are trying to get us enough energy. It's a biological urge, or sometimes it can stem from our emotions and feelings. We try to use food as a way to cope with them. A lot of times that is a learned coping mechanism that we develop over time, using food to cope with our emotions or to not feel our feelings, to kind of numb ourselves. Because feeling your feelings can be really hard. Probably one of the hardest things about developing a healthy relationship with food, in my opinion. Okay, so now that we know the two reasons why we might binge eat, how do we control binge eating at night? The first thing, you have to identify the cause. You have to realize, is it the biological urge to eat, or is it the kind of emotional action that you're taking urge to eat? If it is the biological urge to eat, I have an entire video on extreme hunger that will really help you understand that biological side. I'll link to that up there for you to go through. It's packed with info on the biological side, but essentially you're wanting to eat these large amounts of food because your body needs it. If you're really struggling with this binge eating at night, take a look at your day and ask yourself, are you restricting food earlier in the day? We have a hunger hormone called ghrelin, and what that hunger hormone does is it builds over time, so it gives you that urge to eat. So if you're under eating during the day, that hormone is just going to keep building up, and then at night it is going to be whoa, so overpowering, and you're just going to want to eat all of the things. So in order to regulate those hormones, it's important to eat consistently throughout the day, and enough throughout the day, and enough of all of the food groups. So take a look. Are you eating enough food overall, or are you skimping on food throughout the day? Are you trying to eat super clean, or you're trying to follow XYZ diet and you're cutting out certain foods? All of that restriction can lead us to that binge eating at night. I always say, try something, experiment, and see what the outcome is. So if you feel like, oh, maybe I'm not eating enough carbs during the day, such a common one, you guys. Add some crackers to lunch. Have some toast as a snack, whatever it might be. Add some cereal to your yogurt. See if that makes a difference and helps you to control binge eating at night. Okay, so now for the other side of things, the psychological or emotional side of things, we might be using food as a way to deal with our emotions. It usually feels better in the short term to do this, or so we think, than actually feeling our feelings. This is not a fabulous coping skill, and it's actually going to lead to more negative emotions in the long run. It really turns into this vicious cycle because a lot of times when we binge, we are trying to cover an emotion, then we binge, and then a lot of times it is leading to those guilt and shame feelings, and we're right back to the beginning because we don't want to feel those. So here's what you should do if you think it might be more of that psychological or that emotional part versus the biological piece. First thing to do is identify what you're feeling. Are you feeling stressed? Anxious? Are you freaking bored? I mean, boredom eating is something that we feel. We can feel bored. That can be where food steps in as a coping mechanism for that. You could be looking for distraction, for comfort, so many different things, but the first step is to identify what you're feeling. Maybe you just got in a fight with your significant other and you just head to the pantry and you see those stale marshmallows and you just start eating them, even though they don't even taste good, but it feels better than actually addressing the fight that you had. Can you relate to that? Next thing to do is to, once you've identified the emotion, make a list of ways that you can handle it. If it's boredom and you're just seeking something to do, create a list of things that you can do to occupy yourself. If it's stress, make a list of things that you can do to help with stress relief. Recently, for me to help cope with stress and my anxiety, I've started tapping. So you can look into that more. I use the Tapping Solution app. Some people describe it as meditation for the doer. Like, I have a very hard time just sitting. So using acupressure points in there and just massaging them really helps. So look into that and let me know if you want to hear more on that, or if you've tried tapping yourself, let me know in the comments what your thoughts are, or if you're interested in learning more. Then once you have your list of how to handle that emotion or whatever it might be that you're trying to distract yourself from, I use what I call the emotional eating algorithm. I'll put it up here for you guys, but I'll also link it below. I have a whole blog post that walks you through how to use it, so don't feel like you need to figure everything out in the algorithm right here. But basically what this does is you walk yourself through these questions. Okay, first I ask myself, am I hungry? Am I actually just hungry? Allow yourself to eat. If you're not hungry, and I suggest using the hunger scale, I have a whole video on that, a link there if you guys want to watch it. It's just kind of a tool to assess your hunger and fullness. So I walk you through how to do that more in the video, but use the hunger scale and assess that. And then go on and ask yourself, okay, well, if I'm not hungry, what am I feeling? Identify your feeling, and then go to the list that you made of things to do to handle that specific emotion. I suggest doing the list of things beforehand, like during some downtime, not in the moment, because it's going to be so much harder to actually think of things in the moment. So take like 10 minutes right now. You can take like even 5 and do it, and just write a couple things down for you to do. Then pick one of those things from the list and give it a go, like 5 or 10 minutes. You don't need to do it for too long, but then just reassess, okay, do I still want that food? If you still want that food, go ahead and eat it, and eat it mindfully. Sit down with it, put it on a plate. I have a video all on different mindful eating exercises if you're interested in learning more about that. But just really try to be present in the moment and enjoy it, and not just shovel it down like we do when we feel guilty about eating it. Being mindful is actually going to help you with that satisfaction and help you understand, okay, how much of this do I really need to make me feel satisfied? And do it without guilt. Enjoy it. It's okay. Sometimes we just need a pick-me-up. Sometimes we just need a little bit of chocolate. You feel me? Then you can go ahead and go to your journal and just kind of reflect on the experience. Was the food as good as you thought? Did you feel like you improved some of your stress or your boredom or whatever it is that you were working through? And then I always kind of say, just go back to the beginning. If you're still feeling that way, check in. Are you actually hungry? Because it could have changed from the first time that you asked yourself. And just keep going through this, and you're going to learn something every time you do it, especially when you journal and kind of reflect on that process. And you'll understand, okay, what of these coping mechanisms that I've created, that list that you made, which ones work and which ones kind of don't. You kind of fine tune this process as you go. I hope these tips on how to control binge eating at night were helpful for you, and that you can now identify and set a plan in place on how to control binge eating at night. Above all, do not beat yourself up if you eat past fullness. If you do binge eat at night, that's okay. Use it as a learning experience. I always say no experience is bad. Everything is going to be a chance for you to learn what worked, what felt good, what didn't, and simply move on. It's not worth dwelling over. Also, if you guys want to learn more about what to do after we binge eat, what should we do after we've eaten a large amount of food in a short amount of time, let me know and I'd be happy to make a video on that for you guys, on really practical steps to take after you've binge ate. That rhymed. All right, guys, I will see you next week with another video. See you later.